As the midterms get closer, we've seen President Biden and the White House, they're turning up the heat on their criticisms of the GOP. In a fiery speech Thursday, President Biden accused Republicans allied with former President Trump of turning toward, quote, semi-fascism and of, quote, being a threat to democracy. This all comes after President Biden made some other big news this week. On Wednesday, he announced the federal government would cancel up to $20,000 of federal student loans for millions of Americans. But Republicans, and I will say even some Democrats, were quick to criticize this plan. So I want to first go to you, Michael. You think about sort of President Biden using fascism, semi-fascism. That's a big deal. What's his thinking here, and what's the White House strategy?
So the White House has a kind of two-pronged strategy for the next several months for the elections. One is to really spend a lot of time touting their accomplishments, right? There was, if you think back to March and April of this year, it was really doom and gloom for Democrats. They felt like they hadn't accomplished much of the president's agenda. There was this flurry of activity this summer. The student loans that was just mentioned, the legislation to do climate change and drug prices, gas prices are down, things are kind of looking up a little bit. So one half of the strategy is that, touting all of that progress. The other half is really attacking Republicans and drawing that contrast and saying to voters, look, you have a choice. It's not just a referendum on Joe Biden and what you might think of the Democratic rule in Washington. It is, if you don't want this, look what's out there. And this phrase ultra MAGA, they're trying to link all Republicans to Donald Trump and to say that that agenda is really, really extreme. And whether or not you're entirely satisfied with Joe Biden, that's the alternative. That's their sort of twin strategy for the next few months.
Yeah. And as part of that twin strategy, they're trying to get stuff done that they can actually hold up. So of course we have to talk about student loans. This was a promise, part of a promise that candidate Biden made on the campaign trail. What's your sense of why this happened right now? And might we see all student loan debt canceled?
I think that's highly unlikely. The president really was kind of pushed during the campaign by his more liberal rivals when he was running against Senators Warren and Sanders. He was pushed to do something on student loans. I think he, over the last 18 months, there's been a lot of delay because he still was very uncomfortable about the idea. I mean, there is some level of unfairness that I think even the Democrats would acknowledge. You know, you're picking and choosing groups. Who's going to get a benefit? And, you know, some people are and some people aren't. He finally came around to it, yeah. But I do think that that this is sort of the limit. I mean, I don't know that he'll be able to be pushed much further.
And Ali, you're shaking your head. Of course, or nodding your head, I should say. Yeah. President Biden, when this announcement was made, you had some progressive Democrats who were championing it. You had some who also said it's not going far enough. The president of the NAACP saying that he should go even farther because this affects African Americans in a particular way. But you also have some moderate Democrats, right, who are saying this could hurt inflation and make it even worse. What's your reporting say?
Well, because I think that for moderate Democrats who we're hearing from, people in tough Senate contests like Senator or wannabe Senator Tim Ryan, who's running in Ohio, and then Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, who's playing defense in Nevada, they're speaking out against this decision from President Biden. And then we're also hearing from frontline Democrats on the House side of this who are speaking to that unfairness that you're talking about there. But on the other side of this is the reality that progressives have been talking about for a long time, that this helps people not be saddled with this debt for the entirety of their lives. And this is impacting millions of Americans. Some of them are not necessarily even Americans who are working with college degrees right now. I think that's part of the conversation that might be being left out, is that some of these folks had to drop out of college for whatever reason and are not getting the high earning benefits of having that education behind them, but still having to pay that student loan debt. So I think that's a piece of this conversation too. I think it's a moment for Biden where he can say it's a promise made and a promise kept, although it's a promise that doesn't make him the most popular person with everyone, because progressives still want more and moderates don't want this to happen at all. I will say Republicans who I've spoken to, I think feel like this is a moment for them to have an inroad for the conversation that they want to have in the midterms, which is all about the economy, all about inflation. This provides them an avenue to do that, even as Democrats would rather focus in the way that you're talking about on the ultra MAGA movement, tying Trump as the binary here, not making this just a referendum on Biden, but, oh, wait, Trump is back in the news cycle again. Let's remember what the 1v1 is, the Biden versus Trump of it. Yeah. That's clearly what the White House would like to campaign on, too.
And Scott, as Allie's talking about popularity, we should point out, according to Gallup, President Biden's job approval is hitting a record high right now. It's up. It's 6 percentage points to 44%, his highest in a year. We should note that that still means he's underwater in some ways. 53% of Americans are disapproving of his job performance. But how does that square with your reporting and what you're seeing and what we've been talking about?
Well, we're going to get a real good sense of how politically popular Democrats think the student loan decision and order is, because we are less than 75 days till the midterm elections. And on behalf of my children and children everywhere, I ask rhetorically, where did the summer go? But we're getting there. And this is a chance for candidates to articulate their message and make their homestretch arguments. Let's see next week if we see a bevy of new campaign ads from Democrats mentioning the student debt, student loan issue. Because I can tell you what we saw this past week: new abortion rights, women reproductive health rights ads from Democrats. They saw what happened Tuesday in upstate New York in the Hudson Valley, where a Democrat won the first real head-to-head Republican on Democrat battle for Congress since the Supreme Court ruling in June. And Democrats exceeded expectations, their expectations, I think Republicans' expectations too. And here come more ads about abortion rights after an election in which the Democrat made abortion rights his primary issue. Let's see if student debt becomes an issue in the next 75 days.
And Eva, you've been out there on the campaign trail, as we've said. How are people viewing student loans and this action by President Biden?
Well, this is an issue that doesn't fall neatly along partisan lines. I think the argument that we've heard from Republicans is that this is really a deal for the wealthy, and that working class people in middle America are going to be paying for the elites. But that really doesn't really pass muster, because you have working class folks in middle America who are saddled with student loan debt too. So I'm interested to see how this rolls out. I will say something that often happens is that when these different programs are targeted, and this one very much is that it takes a longer time to implement. So let's see if the federal government can actually work with some effectiveness on this, and when these loans are actually canceled. That will make all the difference. Is this actually going to work when it's all said and done?
It's a good question and a big question. Michael, the White House, going back to punching back, because it's clearly they're having a week at the White House. The White House social media team had a whole thread attacking by name a bunch of Republicans, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, for going after student loan forgiveness, but having received forgiveness of their PPP loans. That, of course, was tied to the COVID loans. Right. What's going on at the White House? What is behind this social media thread?
Somebody there ate their Wheaties, is what happened.
I mean, this coffee.
This was, if you watched the official White House Twitter feed, it's not an exciting place to be. It's not TikTok here. It's pretty boring usually, and yet they sort of came to life and were very aggressive in pushing back. I think you can make a case that they were a little bit unfair in the comparison. The PPP loans, which were for small businesses and restaurants, were entirely designed to be forgiven. That was the whole idea, that the money was essentially a bridge while businesses were going to get back on their feet because of the pandemic, and so the idea was you give them the money, but then you're going to ultimately forgive it. Student loans obviously weren't designed that way, so there's a little bit of a kind of unfairness there. But look, it politically, I think it did exactly what the White House wanted to do, which is to get people talking and to put some of these Republicans back on their heels, because it is a little bit of a
a punch in the nose, really. It's a little bit of a punch in the nose.
A punch in the nose, absolutely.
Eva, I want to ask you about a man named Maxwell Frost. He's 25 years old, 25-year-old political organizer in Florida. If he won his primary in Florida, if he goes to Congress, he would be the first member of Gen Z to go to Congress. I wanted to ask about him because as we're talking about the political sort of tensions, you have this new generation who's now younger than me going to Congress, which feels a little crazy. But also, it shows that the Democrats have a bench that is willing to go to Congress. What are you hearing? What do you make of his win and what it says about the Democrats?
Well, this is where the energy is in the Democratic Party, with young progressives of color. That is where it is. And I think what I'm watching is, are the octogenarians in power going to support them, or are they going to stand in the way? I think another space to watch were the primaries in New York, where that very much was not the end result. One could argue that the progressives of color, the young progressives of color, were stifled in New York by the Democratic apparatus. So this, no doubt, I think is where a lot of the enthusiasm is. But I'm not yet convinced that the Democrats in control of the party like where this is headed, are willing to invest and really support that base.
It's a good question. And last question, you, with 15 seconds left, Allie. What do you make of what Eva's saying here?
I mean, I look at the results on what happened on Tuesday, and I see a bad night for women. Nikki Fried not getting that gubernatorial nomination. It's kind of the same thing that we saw in 2018 when Gwen Graham lost there. And then, of course, Carolyn Maloney, the powerful chair of the Oversight Committee, losing to another powerful chair of the Judiciary Committee, and Jerry Nadler. She made that race all about the idea that the old boys club is still in play. I think gender was a factor on Tuesday night as well.
Yeah, a good point and an important point. So thanks to our panelists for joining us and for sharing your reporting.